Hey, it's Elizabeth Lawsuit Tracker. I get questions all the time on settlements in MDLs or federal cases. Typically, there is a point system in mass tort settlements if there is a medical injury. So, for this example, I'm going to use the Roundup litigation. There is a basic structure for the point system, so it will assign numerical values to various aspects of each plaintiff's case individually to determine their relative share of the settlement fund. And it's typically based off of medical diagnosis, exposure history, age at diagnosis, injury severity, and strength of causation evidence. So the key points for the Roundup case for the medical diagnoses points, in this litigation specifically, non-Hodgkin's lymphoma receives the highest point values, and then subtypes will receive different point values based off of scientific evidence provided in the pretrial discoveries, and then medical documentation quality affects the point allocation. So a lot of times in these cases, lawyers will pull all of your medical records, and the quality of those, how recent they were, if they were attainable, things like that, will affect how strong your case is. Exposure points. So professional exposure like landscapers, groundskeepers, farmers typically will receive more points than someone that was using Roundup residentially. And then duration measured in years of use with longer exposure increasing points. Frequency of use, so days per year or months, factors into the calculations, and documentation of exposure. So receipts, employment records, things like that will strengthen the claims. Then there are the age and harm points. So younger plaintiffs typically receive more points due to longer projected suffering and lost earnings. Death cases receive additional points, and then quality of life impact and economic losses are factored in. So typically your attorney would ask you if you've missed work for this because of treatment or onset symptoms before diagnoses, things like that. So then it gets down to calculating the points, and this is done by a settlement administrator typically. So they would review each claimant's submitted documentation, assign points based off the settlement agreement criteria, which is what the lawyers from both parties would negotiate for before all this, tallies total points across the claimants, and then determines the value per point by dividing the settlement fund by total points, and then calculates individual award amounts by multiplying each claimant's points by point value. And then, so different important considerations. Point systems vary between different settlement agreements, even within the Roundup litigation. There have been multiple rounds of Roundup settlements with potentially different point structures. The Roundup litigation has been ongoing for so long, and there hasn't been like one mass settlement. As I made a video on last week, there was a jury decision for a single plaintiff of over $2 billion, and that's also the difference of pursuing this within the MDL or mass torts, or saying I don't want to accept that and I want to take my case specifically to a jury trial. And then individual settlements may include caps or minimum payment thresholds. Exact point values are typically confidential until settlement administrations begin, and claims are subject to verification, and it can be adjusted if evidence is lacking. So that's kind of an overview of how the point process works in settlements. This will obviously be different between MDLs, so like the barred MDL will have different considerations and different points equaling different value. But if you have any questions, please feel free to leave them in the comments. And then as always, if you are interested in learning more about the Roundup litigation, check out our website at lawsuittracker.org. Thanks.